Hey, it's Jason. I am here in Berwyn, Pennsylvania to take a look at an awesome recreational pond that we just finished up. This client rescues St. Bernards and runs a rescue, and that was a huge influence on this water feature going in. I cannot wait to show it to you. Zach's out back. Let's go say hi and check it out. Come on, Zach.
Morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Great, man.
Oh,
See this thing?
this is awesome. Just wow. This is definitely the biggest recreational pond that we've built so far. And it came out absolutely awesome. Has just about everything here. So I can't wait to walk around and check it out.
Yeah, man, we got a lot to show you. This thing has everything. Every part of it is just a labor of love, and a lot of detail with the stone and the steps. And I just want to take some time and go through this. This is actually the first time I've seen it since we finished about 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's really cleared up. It's really starting to balance, and I couldn't be happier with how this came down.
So yeah, before we walk through it, I remember how this all started. It was pretty cool. The homeowner called in and she was looking for a pool for her dogs. When we started talking about what she was looking for, we thought that maybe a recreational pond might have a lot more benefits to her. There are some really cool features about recreational ponds, like being open year round and looking absolutely incredible year round. So that was how this whole thing started. And you guys just turned it into reality, and fantastic job.
Well, that was what was really cool. There's always a unique way that people decide to go with these types of projects, and this is about as unique as it's gotten for me. She rescues St. Bernards specifically, so massive dogs, heavy-footed dogs. So everything had to be really, really solid.
Yeah.
And, getting in and out as they age, she was educating us on that they really, as they start to get like 7, 8, 9 years old, they really have a tough time with arthritis and stuff. So, and we'll get into why we did. That's why we got the beach entrance, right. And that's where we got the steps and some access points, for these big guys to kind of get in and out as they want. And they love it. They're all over this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's obviously a little bit cooler out here today. We're out here in jackets and things, and it started off really a lot about the St. Bernards and them being able to get in, but I have a feeling they can't wait to get in now too, right?
Yeah, so. Yeah.
Here we are, right kind of at what I would call the bottom of the feature, where everything ends. And we got the negative edge here, we got the pond here, but there's also some other really cool elements, such as a patio and a fire pit. And one of my favorite things about this whole project already that I can tell from here is the different vantage points and how you get to interact with the pond in different areas, such as, that fire pit patio. And then there's going to be other seating areas as we walk up through this thing. So that just makes it so neat. But here we are at the negative edge. So let's start with the negative edge, and then tell me a little bit about the pond as well.
So the negative edge was actually something you had taken us out on a trip out at Ricketts Glen, and we got to see some cool natural water features. I was inspired by that trip, actually. There was this part that we saw where it was like this whole pond was kind of dropping over. We do negative edges all the time, and typically, the size has to fit the size of the pond, right? And we'll have a waterfall that comes out. This one, we wanted to grab waterfalls across the whole face of the edge of the pond, so that when you come up from the driveway and you walk through the pathway, the first thing you're seeing is these waterfalls. They're really low profile. There just gets rolling crash that drops into the gravel, and it just does a great job at pulling a lot of the debris out of the surface and just opened up how we can interact with this thing. How we can walk from one patio to the other and never really lose that sound because it's so close to our seating areas and our visuals. What I do really like about the negative edge is you can't really see this thing until you come into the backyard. Right? So as you walk up, you see these big waterfalls in the back, and then as you come in, it just keeps getting more and more complex, and you just start seeing all these little details as you're walking around. It's hard to walk around this and take your eyes off of the feature, and the negative edge played a big part of that.
Many times it feels like we need these big crashing waterfalls and things. Some of our favorite ones actually come out when they're large rocks kind of width-wise, and then very low drops. They look very natural that way, just like you were talking about Ricketts Glen, where things roll over. Because of the length of this pond, you definitely needed to make it more than just one waterfall coming out into the negative edge. And I think you accomplished that very well. Also gave you a lot to look at from that fireplace patio.
Yeah, it did, and it lets us, you know, because the whole point of this is to get into the pond for the dogs and walk through it. So we wanted to walk next to water all of the time. You know, if we're coming in from the beach, you're obviously walking directly into water. But even like what we're standing on right now, like this is a small step up. It gives you an elevation change from the patio without looking like, you know, we had to get this big giant riser in and you're walking up a staircase to then walk down. So it's just this little step up. We get to walk right past this little rolling waterfall, right into a staircase into the bottom pond. And we've got some cool stuff to show you on the bar area and some seats and stuff that we did inside. But that allowed us multiple ways to enter the pond. So you didn't feel forced to walk really, really far around to get in and out of this thing.
Right.
So having that waterfall kind of splitting around this centerpiece allowed us to do that.
Here we are at the negative edge, and you know, on recreational ponds, you kind of have two options. One being an intake bay, and the other one being what we call a negative edge, where the water flows out of the pond and goes back down into the ground. And I think there's benefits to both.
Yeah.
I really love negative edges. I think they look absolutely incredible. I like how the water, you know, skims across the top and then drops into a gravel, which I feel makes it a little bit easier to clean. So the way that this was constructed is there was a hole dug, there was liner put in, then the vaults, and then the aqua blocks with the gravel on the top. So everything's being drawn from the bottom, and that's what allows us to use the gravel as the filter, but then anything that passes through the gravel ends up into those vaults. Once we have kind of the structure built, then you need to make it look good.
Yeah,
That's easy.
That's the fun part. Yeah, so we're sitting on a roughly 3,600 gallon storage to run these waterfalls and run all these streams, and you know, we kind of see where the lines are curved and the rock breaks everything up, but we're sitting on a nearly perfect rectangular. That's where we start, and
Right.
that's it's usually the first time that a customer's concerned about what we're doing. We show them all these really cool pictures of this creative organic projects, and we come out and we dig a big square is the first thing we do.
Right.
Like kind of what's going on here and how's that going to look. So there's a lot of really cool tricks that we've learned over the years on how to hide the size. We are sitting on a very long basin. It's really narrow and it's really long because we had some you know, it's some wet wells and some things that are underground that we had some limitations where we could go. So we're sitting on 98 aqua blocks, large water matrix, water storage matrix is what they're called. They just create a void space for us to store more water than the way that it used to be done was large, giant gravel pits.
Right. So each one of those blocks stores about 32 gallons. And the way that the size of this is determined is by how much water comes from your pond and your streams and your waterfalls and your constructed wetlands. So we need to make sure that this vault is large enough to store enough water to get the system up and running and all that. One of the reasons that I really like negative edges is I think there's some real benefit to having water stored in the dark underground. And you got over 3,000 gallons here. It keeps the water a little bit cooler, and I just think it has a lot of other benefits. Intake bays are absolutely awesome. They work great. One of the huge benefits is they're a lot less money to construct compared to the water coming out, and they look really cool.
Yeah.
They do. There's nothing wrong with either one. There's something I like about just that much water being stored underground. I just really think it helps with some different things. So depending on your pond design, you may be saying, hey, all right, I get it. The water's flowing out of the pond and into the negative edge, but where's the pumps and where's all the water going? Many times what we do is we house our pumps inside vaults and take the water and push it up to the top. With recreational ponds, we like to get the pumps on the outside so that they meet pool code. So what happens is we put in some pipes and we literally draw the water with external pumps, and the water draws from our negative edge through those pumps and then pushes it up to different constructed wetlands and other areas throughout the system. of my favorite part about the water features that we typically build is that you usually don't see pumps or anything like that.
Right.
One thing with recreational ponds is we do want to get the pumps on the outside. All right, it meets pool code and it's just a safer way to go. So with these pumps being on the outside, this is not going to look like this for long. Homeowners getting ready to have something built. You want to describe that?
This client has a carpenter that she's hired that's going to come out and build a really cool custom cover for this and for the electrical components that's going to have access panels and all sorts of stuff. So that's this is not exactly what it's going to look like, but it is good to know that you are going to have a power source that's going to need to be fairly close to the ponds. You know, we can put it as far away as we want. It just incurs extra cost because now we're pushing water further, and there's a lot of fluid dynamics we got to contend with for that. So picking the place, where we're going to put it, and how we're going to deal with it visually is part of that design process that we should be talking about ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just like any of our other ponds that we build, this has our autodoser and IonGen system to combat string algae and to keep the bacteria levels where they're supposed to be automatically. It's a large system, so it's a lot of pumps if you were to do it with an autodoser, and they just seem to work more consistently and better. So recreational ponds not going to be any different than our 8x11s, 11x16s. It'll just use more bacteria, more product.
Yep. To me, it's just a peace of mind. You get to set it and forget it, other than when that alarm goes off on your phone once every few weeks or month or whatever it is, in order to change out some treatments or have us do that stuff for you. But it's pretty low maintenance once you get to this point. Fall time where some leaves are coming down, which they're dealing with right now, that's where you got a little bit, but you got that throughout your whole landscape anyway. But other than that, the dosing system does a great job of keeping the water chemistry where it should be and getting the right treatments in there. And when I first started in the business, string algae was always our biggest battle. I mean, it's a natural thing. It grows in an inch of water. It grows, in 50 feet of water. It grows in fresh water. It grows in salt water. So algae is just a plant that is a very natural product, but not everybody wants it. So those IonGens work great at taking care of that string algae, and it just makes the system that much low maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, considering the maintenance of the IonGen is almost non-existent. It's
right.
Once a year you change out a probe, versus a daily battle with algae. Nothing gets rid of all algae. We actually don't want it to
No,
get
we
rid
don't
of
want
all
to.
algae.
Algae is important.
Algae is a really important part of the ecosystem, but there are some that are really not appealing to look at, and definitely not appealing to be swimming with, and that's where these systems do a good job at keeping the maintenance of that stuff and that battle a lot easier to contend with.
Yeah, they really do. And the other part that is very important for that is making sure that your constructed wetlands, your biological filters, are the right size. So speaking of those, you want to go check those out?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's go check those out. On our way to the wetland, I couldn't help but stop right here, man. What a view from here. We are right here, actually at the beach entrance. You mentioned the dogs, and I know that was an important part of the design from the very beginning. You mentioned the dogs being able to come in and out, and one of the easiest ways to get in and out of a water feature is actually just doing a beach entrance where you can literally just walk out without any steps. So that was one goal from the very beginning of this project.
Yeah, and I like the way this turned out. Beaches can be kind of tough. We've already got this rock that's got a hold-up liner everywhere, and now we're just going to introduce this gravel that's going to hold it up. So what I really like the way that this turned out is so we don't have it rocked all the way around. We don't have every rock touching every rock to hold everything in. This rock here is holding back this level, and it's just in front of a rock that's maybe 3 feet in front of it. So it just has
the
this
gravel running behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's you don't want to terrace things into the pond because then you're kind of getting rid of the beach. Using some wood definitely helps to hold us some gravel like we have here, but it's just a really cool way to get to a pond edge. It's really important because she rescues such large dogs with these St. Bernards. They have problems with their hind legs. They have problems with arthritis pretty early on, and she's typically getting these dogs around that time when it's time that they really need assistance. So this this was her main goal, was for these rescue dogs. So it was really important that they didn't have to walk up steps in order to get in and out of the pond, because at some point they're just not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like how that beach entrance is on this side, but it's still so interactive with the rest of the pond. I mean, this leads you down to the deep portion, and then there are steps out of the other areas that allow you to get in and out. Yeah, this thing's about 4.5 feet deep in the middle. Gives you a lot of different levels and a lot of different options on how you want to get in.
Yeah,
including the jumping route.
yeah, that's a good 6.5, 7 foot jump from top to the bottom. You know, it looks like we don't have a lot going on here, which is what we shoot for. You know, less is more in these hard surfaced ponds. But these rocks here, this was a very technical portion of the build. We've got a beach entrance. The liner's got to be just right, because we also have the negative edge where the water's flowing out a couple feet away, where the pumps are housed. We've got steps. Everything needed to be tied together where it didn't look like it was forced. Placement and picking which ones are going to go where, and tying with the levels of the steps later down in the water. A high in the vaults that you're walking right by. So a lot of these things come into play when we're talking about how we're going to build your pond. And if the client was to ask me what this was going to look like in the beginning design stages, kind of have to shrug my shoulders about that one. I really don't know until we get in here and we start getting rocks. And this is a part of the project that is really difficult to explain what it's going to look like and how it's going to work out. We just knew we were going to be able to walk into the pond here, be able to walk into the pond there. That's about as much detail as we can really get before we're actually building it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's still one of my favorite parts of water features, is that you don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and you just get to build as you go, and you get to change as you go. You get to make art happen as you go with all these raw materials, and it's so much fun. So one of the things that we need to take into consideration on all projects is drainage. The way this property is laid out, in a way where the pond is and where the negative edge is, everything is running to that area. And if we're not careful, and we've learned from experience, what happens is that you end up putting the pond and the negative edge in sometimes the lowest part of the yard, because that's where it really lays itself out to look the most natural.
Right.
But what happens is then you get some heavy rains and different things, and the water comes down and runs into the pond. If you start getting a lot of stormwater runoff into a system like this, you can really run into a lot of water quality issues and different things. So one of the things that I'm noticing as you walk around, which we talked about during the project kickoff meeting too, but as we're walking around, I am really noticing that there's some pretty good swale work and those kinds of things around the outside of this. So then when it rains, the water comes down and skirts around this whole system.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't matter if we're doing a 2 foot by 2 foot fountainscape, or something like this is just 2,400 square feet or total all the way around. And it's not just water quality. We don't want these rocks to move. We don't want water sitting up against the back of a liner and then freezing and pushing things and shifting and tearing. That's where you get liner tears. It's where you get things falling. I mean, it's just good practice to know where the water, not just where it's draining to, but just the surface runoff. Grading is always going to be the best way to manage it if possible. You do a drain, that's a failure point. It can get clogged. It needs maintenance. We're taking water. We're even going to show you some areas where we did it inside the landscape bed behind here, where we're cutting off a lot of water that's coming from the sky, diverting it around. There's some areas where it just is what it is. It has to be. But we use plants, mulch, some rock, gravel to absorb as much of that as possible. We just really want to be careful of how much that water is actually going to that spot. So that was a big part of this whole entire project. It's a big part with any project, but when we're taking up a hillside that's the water used to run straight to here.
Right.
We've got swales around the edge of the pond, but we've also got swales 60 yards behind the ponds and around the backside by the fence. Just anything we can do to cut off the amount of water coming from other properties. It's something that, like you said, we learned by not doing it, and by making some pretty big errors, and now we know that it's just that has to happen first before pretty much anything else happens. Our elevations of where the water is going to be coming off of the falls, where the stream's going to be,
where the height of the pond is going to be. All that is going to be based on a really good understanding what happens when it rains.
Fantastic way to put it. What happens when it rains?